All right. Well, good evening, everyone, and thanks for stopping by for our next fireside chat. This time we have Hezekiah from Glasscat Studios joining us to talk about everything that goes on with technical art. So, Hez, you want to start with giving us a brief introduction and tell us a bit about yourself?
Yeah, so like you said, hey, I'm Hezekiah Olopade. I am the founder of Glasscat Studios, an indie game studio based in Orlando. I started it 5 years ago, and we initially started with a group of five people. We made virtual reality escape rooms in the beginning. We released our first game called Trial of the Gods. It's a game where you're doing an escape room based in ancient Egypt, and you're trying to appease the gods. You go through five trials, you escape good. If you don't escape, then I guess you have to do it all over again, right? That was our first title. We dropped the second title called The Haunting Hour, where you were playing as a ghost. It's like Luigi Mansion art style inspired, but instead of you hunting ghosts, you're doing the hunting, trying to escape before a witch comes back. And currently, I'm solo deving my current title called True Mechanics. It's a blend between Overcooked and car repair. Uh, Currently targeted for the Nintendo Switch. I've been working on it now since 2019. Uh, yeah, I went to school for game dev at, hold on a second, Florida International Entertainment Academy. Yo, it's a mouthful of a name.
Yeah.
I'm so used to saying FIA. So just in case you didn't know, is FIA is based in Orlando. I got my master's with a specialization in technical art. And since then, I just been running. I started my studio right after that with a few friends and been building games since then.
That is fantastic. I'm so happy for you, bro.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, so I guess since you mentioned, you been a lot of time, you went to grad school in Florida, just like started your studio straight out of that. So anything new going on in Florida game dev scene?
So currently they're doing like this thing called Meta Center Global Week, uh, or like Synapse is generally once a year they do like this whole tech meetup in Orlando. It's like a convention. People from like everywhere come in and they set up showing off what they're doing. They're actually displaying the new quests here as well
The Quest
in
3?
our downtown. Yeah,
Ooh, okay.
yeah, so people can like play around with it. It's pretty cool. One of my friends went and tried it out, and he was like, "Yo, it's great." I might like try to squeeze my way downtown tomorrow to see if I can go and check it out. Uh, and I don't know if you know, but Orlando is trying to build up its technical hub, and with EA being downtown in this heart next to the master's program for game development, they're trying to make a whole creative village down there. So it's a lot of like
Ooh,
game devs, indie scene. There's a few other companies they're like rumored to be moving here as well. So like the Orlando scene for your tech and game dev is like growing massively every year.
nice. Yeah, I know you know. I'm trying to think who else from Discord. I know to build down there with you. Um, who else from the Discord is down there?
Uh, I honestly don't know. Like I didn't even know the Bell was here. I thought he was in
Yeah,
Miami for the longest. Then I
yeah,
found out
because like
like
he just like because he just stays in like the quiet little corner and doesn't tell anyone what he's up to.
right, like I found out like he's like right around the corner from me. So I told him I'm gonna harass him one of these
Yeah,
days.
he
I'm just
lives like
like,
down
yo,
the street from you.
yeah. I'm over like the whole time I'm over here like, yo, you mean to tell me this whole time you were not in Miami, but you're like literally up the road from me? And he's like, yeah.
So,
So
I know, you were telling us about all your experience. Well, before we were talking a little bit about your experience with technical art. And one of the things you mentioned was like, I mentioned like, yo, like I don't have that much background in technical art. So like sitting down to think of like these questions was kind of rough for me. And it was like actually a common thing that happened. So like, I'm sure there's a lot of people that actually have misconceptions about like what exactly does a technical artist do. So could you give us like your thoughts on like, here's what my job is?
so if you ask most people what a technical artist is, they generally say this one statement. Like it's so common that I was like, you're not really saying much. But they're like, we're the bridge between art and programming. So On one side, we're saying yes and no to artists about things that they want to do, and on the other side, we're telling programmers yes and no. These are things that we can't do, or we have to do this to make the game look pretty. So, technical artists, we're the medics, is what I like to call it. Like if you're playing Overwatch or any of those type of games, we're the support group. We generally go in and like help out the other groups wherever we can and make things work.
I like
Hopefully,
that
that was
metaphor
helpful.
too, because it's like you're not the people you see in front, but they're the people that keep the team alive.
Oh, yeah, that's pretty much us. Like, oh snap, we really need to get this like thing in. Let's toss it on the tech artist and see if they can do it. Oh, we need somebody to make some VFX. Maybe the tech artist can do it. Like, it's kind of just like we're the generalists of the industry that no one sees.
Interesting. So on that, like, talk about like what a technical artist is. Are there any like misconceptions about like, no, that's not what a technical artist is that you'd like to take a chance to dispel?
Uh, Not that I can think of, to be honest. Like, most people think that like tech artists are like wizards, and we can't agree or disagree to that statement. Like, I don't, in our code, whenever you sign up and get your like house in tech artness, like we've been told we can't agree or disagree with that statement. No comments.
you you just oh okay, you played the fifth.
Yep, always.
That's great. Um, what was I gonna say? So I know you mentioned a lot. Actually, I guess we can flip to. So when did you really first start getting into technical art as like a this is the thing I want to do?
So to be honest, I used to want to be a producer. When I first got into game dev, I went through undergrad for game development, and when I first jumped in, they were like, producers are the ones who pitch games, and I was like, I want to pitch games. But then as I like dove into it, I was like, well, I don't only want to pitch games, I need to understand games because like I was in medicine before. So when I switched into game dev, I was like, in order for me to be able to do my job correctly, I need to understand how everyone else does their job. So that's when I started learning how to program. I started learning how to do art. I started learning the pipeline and how to design. I started jumping everywhere. Then when I went to grad school, I started talking to like the grad administration, and I was like, well, they're like, what do you want to do? And I was like, well, I want to do production because I want to pitch game ideas. And they're like, anybody can pitch a game idea. I was like, oh, really? Oh, um, hmm. And they're like, well, what do you like
Dream
to do?
crushed.
Yeah, right. I'm like, what do you like to do? Because they're like, production, you're doing like a lot of paperwork and stuff, and like you're spending a lot of times in meetings. And I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. I want to keep one hand in paint and one hand on a keyboard, and then oftentimes swap hands, get my keyboard wet with paint, and then like try to like paint with my dry hand. So they're like, you sound like you're a technical artist. And I was like, what's that? And then that's how I ended up getting introduced into technical art and becoming a technical artist.
Okay. Was there a point like maybe on like a particular project as they introduced you like this is what a technical artist does that made you see like okay, this is why this is a career, like this is why it's valuable?
So not really. Like so in my grad program at FIA, they have tracks. So you have like a production, you have engineering, and then you have the art track. So when you choose your track when on acceptance, you are only in those classes, but you can sit in other classes. So uh, pretty much when I was in the class doing the technical artist things, everything came very like smoothly to me because I was like, oh, I've done this before, I've done this before, I did this. Um, so during that time frame, like they have like a boot camp the first 8 weeks. I was very comfortable being a technical artist. Like I was like everything's smooth. I like what I'm doing. It's like it kind of gave me the same feeling of being in the medical field where I was like problem solving, constantly jumping around. So I was like, this is for me.
Okay. If you don't mind me asking, just quick subject, but like what were you doing in medicine like before you got into game dev?
So I was in school for medicine. Like I had 2 classes left. So uh it was funny because one of my friends uh he told me about game dev, and I was like, yo, that sounds fun. And I was like, questioning him a lot about it, and I met with the admins, and I just switched majors. Uh, Parents probably weren't too happy about hearing that,
What?
as I was almost done, and I told him like,
Bro.
"Hey, I'm switching majors to game development," and my dad was like, "Okay."
This board's in knots.
he he said okay, and I was surprised. It was a shocking moment. He was like, yeah, a Nigerian parent. Like my
No,
dad's
no, what?
Nigerian. Yeah, yeah,
I'm glad you're still here to give this
right,
interview.
right. This is coming from the household. Like if you made a B, you don't eat, man. And it's like, oh,
Bro.
I want to switch from medicine to game dev, something that isn't really like set in stone. And it's just like I'm pretty sure like he was like flipping tables, but he just was like very accepting and like, all right, is there a grad program for that? I was like, yeah, there's one here. And like within 24 hours, he was here in Orlando. He's like, I booked us an appointment. Let's go. All right, we're gonna go meet with the grad program. I was like, okay, yeah. So we went there. We did a tour. We talked to them. Um, Everything just fell into place when I switched to game design. Like it was very smooth selling. Like I met with the teachers who would accept me into the college. I showed them my portfolio at the Synapse conference that's happening right now. Uh, they accepted me on the spot. They're like, "Yeah, send me your portfolio. We'll accept you into the program with this portfolio as is." I wasn't even done with undergrad yet, and I was like,
What?
"Yeah, it was like mind blowing." Like when I tell you my game dev path has been really smooth and like enjoyable. I'm like, this is what I was supposed to do.
Okay. Yeah, I'm glad you said that things fell into place and not my dad showed up and then suddenly I fell.
Oh
Because
no. Oh no.
that's where I thought that story was going.
No, no, no. It was actually pretty smooth. Like he was very supportive. To this day, he's still very supportive.
I'm happy to hear that, bro. That's great. So, actually, one of the things that was interesting that you touched on. So you mentioned that like a lot of the times you spent like on a particular track and for arts for like art or programming or production, but you could sit in on the other classes. So when your
Hmm.
time as a technical artist, do you feel it's more important to have a foundation in art or programming, or do you think it's actually you need equal in both? You need it.
You need equal in both, to be honest.
Okay,
Because most jobs, when they look at technical artists, they expect you to have some grasp of programming or object-oriented understanding. Like you have to have at least some baseline understanding. There's like no job that I've seen thus far for technical art that hasn't been like a foundation of Python, a foundation of some coding language. So like without that coding portion, I don't really see you like going far as a technical artist because like we do a lot of automation. Like we're doing a lot of programming based art.
okay, interesting. Because a lot of times you see that, like, I mean, you'll meet people who have picked up like various like pieces of bits of information over their like, careers, but they don't really have real foundations in those two separate disciplines. So it's just
Yeah.
fascinating that there's a set of people that like these people need both, and you're not getting into this without both.
Like you can technically get in there. Like riggers are technical artists. Um but it's it's like a subcategory. Like so like the category of technical art is so vast, but like rigging you don't necessarily need to know how to program to go in to rig. But it definitely helps because when you're building like 20 character rigs, automation helps. So like
Right.
programming how to like, oh, I have a script that I could just push a button, it builds out my rig, and then I just move the bones where I want them to be at. Like it is definitely beneficial in that aspect. And there are some people that they don't really spread wide. They kind of just like, I'm this specific type of technical artist. I only make rigs. I only make tools. I only make VFX.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, on the subject of tools, so I took a little bit at your portfolio because I was looking at like other things we could talk about. So, like, I noticed that you had like some really cool Python scripts on there. Is there a particular one of those that you're like, yo, this was busting? I'm like, this was nice.
So my favorite tool is my project management tool. just because I saw in my grad program, every time we made a project, someone had to go in and make a folder structure. They had to go in and like lay out Perforce how we wanted it and do all these other bells and whistles. And everyone had the same applications that they wanted to use as well. Excuse me. So that tool is intense. Like it took me the longest, the most revisions to make out of all the tools that I made. And what it is your I call it all for one. That is a My Hero reference. Yes, it
That's
is.
great. Let's go.
And pretty much it does everything. Like you go in there, you type the name of your project, it makes your folder structure for all of it. Like your game, it says this is where your game goes, this is where your art goes, this is the folder structure for your characters, environment, audio, everything. It also takes a record of apps in your computer. So what it'll do is it'll run through the apps in your computer, check it against a file that I made, like I made a JSON file, and it'll check say, okay, uh, do you have Maya on your computer? Yeah. All right. I'm gonna make a shortcut in the tool for Maya. Do you have Photoshop? I'm gonna do that. Unreal, Unity, whatever tools that are game dev tools that you have on your computer, it grabs them and puts an icon and slaps it onto this tool. So it's easy for you to implement. And then I integrated Perforce to it, so you can actually check if you want to do source control or not. Um, and the biggest thing for artists, they always save stuff to their desktop. No matter where I've worked at, every artist saves stuff to their desktop. So then when you're looking for it in Engine, it's like, oh, the source location is this person's username on their desktop. So the tool, what it does is I tell all the artists to save all their stuff into this folder that I put on your desktop through the Python script. And what it'll do is you push a button, it'll organize all your art into the folder structure and ready for you to just go to Perforce, refresh, and push.
Oh, so it does like okay, so it does a lot of the auto work for them of like all you need to do like because their natural habit of just like throwing things locally. It's like no, no, no. I've put it here. Just open Perforce and click push.
Yeah,
Yo, that is fantastic.
it was a great tool. Like even making assets, like you can go in there, they can type, "Oh, I want to make a character," and it's like, "Are you like, do you want to make it in Maya?" And it's like, "Yeah." So once you do that, it'll create an MB with the character's name with the structure, and then it'll open Maya for you. So everything is just
What?
done. And then it makes the folder structure for you in the actual source project file. So it's all the stuff is already set up for you. And it does it for textures, it does for Substance Painter, it does Photoshop. It does like this tool took so long to make and test.
Yo,
Like it's my greatest tool that I've made to date.
that's fantastic, dude. Because I was literally about to say like, oh, what does it do for textures? And even before you're like, yo, man, it handles textures, handles substance painter. I'm like, oh my goodness, this man handled it all. Okay.
Oh yeah, it's that's why I called it a all for one. Like even producers could use this tool because it will organize their docs, their Excels, their PowerPoints into the folder structure as well. So like I gave them a naming convention. My tool makes a naming convention for you, but if you didn't name it correctly, it'll output a text file and open it and say these are named wrong. Fix the name. Are you okay?
Okay. So on to, I remember you mentioned that this is a bit of a jump, but I remember initially you mentioned that like you started the studio with a few of your friends and there were like five of you. And as you're telling me about like some of the technical art stuff, I'm wondering, do you feel that there's like a point in a studio's life size where they like need to invest in a like dedicated technical artist, or they can like there's a point where there's like okay, you're small enough that like someone's gonna kind of do that job, but that can't be like a whole dedicated employee.
So
Does that question make sense?
yeah, it does. It's a very hard question to answer because like I'm a little biased, because I would always tell them like, "Yo, get a technical artist as early as possible." The reason
Okay.
why I say this is because, and like, get a good technical artist. Like, my one of my teacher's favorite quotes was, uh, "Good technical artists are hard to find," and the reason why is because if you find a really good one, that one covers like so many different uh positions. So instead of you spreading out the positions between like five people, you can get one technical artist that can help support like a few people, and you can get like contractors to do the other stuff. So it's like it's a little 50-50 because like if you bring a technical artist in too late and you have like pipeline inefficiencies, the shoulder structures are kind of messy, like things aren't like structured correctly, they're gonna have to revamp and like clean the structure up. Like, and I've done it in the past for projects or like a few of them where I was like, what's your pipeline? And then they're like, we don't have one. So I had to like structure it for them, make it, clean up their files. Like I made a tool to clean up someone's project before. Like that one was fun. They had all their project was just everywhere. And I was like, all right, this tool is going to go through your whole project and fix everything. All right. Uh, it'll take a day, but everything will work smoothly after that. And then you just have to introduce how to make it work for everybody. But I definitely would say like as soon as possible that you can get one in or that you can afford one, that you should integrate them into your system or your ecosystem.
Interesting. No, I actually kind of like, I see what you're going for, where it's that, like, yes, it's daunting to say that, like, yo, I need this person, like, that has all these separate skills, but it's valuable to the fact that, like, because this person brings so much to the table, they can do the jobs of multiple people. And then you can get by with having a small team because they bring so much to the table on their own.
Oh yeah. Like when I told you like my first team was 5 people. All right. It was 2 environment artists, 1 designer, 1 technical designer slash producer, and me as the technical artist and the like the project lead. And if you have a technical artist and a tech designer, you're going to go really far. Like every project that I've worked with there's just at least one technical designer and me, like we were able to do so much because if they need something, I can make it for them. And then if they need like if I like code up something and I need someone to test, they can test it with me. So it's like, oh, I need someone to code up this system. All right, toss it over here to me. I can code it up for you and then like integrate it into your stuff. Like what do you need? So like it was kind of that dynamic. Like you're like, oh, I need UI elements. Okay, I can make you some temp ones until we get an artist to come in and make the final.
Ooh, okay, I like that. That's nice.
Yeah,
So,
it's great.
that's fantastic. So, speaking of tools and projects you worked on, I mean, it's definitely cool to hear what you've done so far. But in terms of stuff you want to do in the future, what are some other tools that you're like, yo, I've like, let's say I heard about some other technical artists that made this and I want to give that a shot too. Anything like that?
Not anything crazy. I think this is more like a design thing, a technical design thing. Um, because I'm currently interested in like how to build like modular spaces and procedural areas. Like for my current game, making like procedural generated like garages so that players have like unlimited like options and gameplay that they can play. So then it offsets from me having to make it, and I have like a AI generated like level that's built for them to play. That's
Okay.
the biggest thing that I'm interested in.
Ooh, okay. So essentially, okay, yeah. So like figuring out how to like intelligently design the like AI to generate levels. So you might build like the individual pieces of the level, and then the AI says, "Cool. Here's how I slap these pieces together to make new interesting levels that still like function and play. Like interesting and they're fun and they're balanced. And then it's not you sitting here like actually designing them all."
Yeah,
Okay. Ooh, that does sound nice.
right.
So that, ooh, yeah, that sounds like something I'm like, okay, I'm gonna have to hit you up because I might have some questions for you about that soon.
Okay.
Um, so I guess, do you have any opinions or thoughts or like quite thoughts about how the job of a technical artist might change like in the future, like as games continue to change or progress?
I think I know like AI is a touchy subject, but I think the integration of AI into the pipeline with like tech artists, like utilizing the tools, will make our job smoother and make game development even faster for everybody in total. Because
Okay.
once you have like oh, I have this artificial intelligence that I made that like already checks like I'd already looked into this and like what my professor called it, he called it a daemon, and it's something that runs in the background on your computer while you're doing things. And what it does is like I tried to make one, and he was like, "Don't do it." I was like, "Oh," because it would sync things to Perforce, and he was like, "That will break stuff if you do it." I was like, "You're right." So I still think about it to this day of like making it smarter to where it will check to see if it crashes something, probably with Jenkins, and then if it doesn't crash, then it'll push like it'll build like a side thing. But yeah, I think integrating AI with the role of tech art would actually make things like grow exponentially.
Okay. No, I see what you're saying. Like the idea of like an automated process that's just checking to see like, okay, is there a new file? Let's try pushing it. Did it build correctly? Cool, let's merge. And then stuff
Yeah.
like that. And then not even like eliminating the possibility of someone like forgetting to commit a file. I'm just going to automatically handle things like that for you.
Oh yeah. Like I know Ubisoft a few years ago they were using Houdini to check their assets before they go into engine.
Yeah.
Like it was a whole process that they would use Houdini as their integration process. And I'm like, if that was automated where it's just like, oh, as soon as the asset updates, it goes into Houdini, checks, runs the script. If it's cool, push it into engine. If it's not, push it back to the artist with a notification. Like I'm pretty sure they have something like that right now, but I can't confirm it or deny if they do.
Yeah. There it is again. Okay. Let's see if there's anything else I really wanted to touch on before I open up to other questions. No. We went through that really fast. Those are some great answers from all of you. Let me hit the chat to see what other questions people had. Actually, yeah, we can open up. So I don't see any questions in the chat right now, but we do want to open up the floor to questions for everybody if anyone wants to ask a question. All right. So while we're waiting, I got another one for you.
All
So
right.
is there any other technical artists in industry that you've like read about some of the work they've done or seen their stuff and you're like, all right, this guy knows what he like, or that sorry, that guy, maybe that girl, like that person knows what they're doing.
Uh, to be honest, it's bad. I don't know their names. Like I follow them on Twitter or
Okay.
X. And
The look on your face when you said X.
it's such nah, I'm not gonna get into that. Just I follow them on X and
Okay, you forgot their
uh
names. It's fair.
yeah.
You didn't do it on purpose.
Yeah, I don't really know them directly. It's just like
Yeah.
whenever I would like look on there, like I follow like a whole bunch of devs and they'll share other people's stuff, and I'm like, yo, that's a cool shader. Like, how do they do it? And I'll like follow them just to see what they did. Or there's like one person who uh they use nothing but gradient sheets, and that's how they shaded everything. So like seeing that, and they have one draw call, I was like, this is crazy. Like
Hey, yo,
it
what?
yeah, it changed my whole perspective. Like they have like a gradient sheet and it's just a whole bunch of gradients, and then they just spread their UVs for all their assets using that gradient sheet. And then if they ever want to change it, they just offset the gradient sheet,
Oh my
and then they
God.
can change everything in the game. So it's like how Kingdom Hearts made different color palettes for things is they could do that just by offsetting the UV sheet. And I'm just like, how did you think of this? Like, this is pretty cool. Like,
Yo, that's pretty great.
yeah, and it's like smaller level stuff, but like, I'm always interested in like when tech artists do like really quirky things with like simple approaches.
That's dope. Okay, so I did see a question. Let me jump to that. So we got a question from Chris G. How do you go about approving in your field, especially since tech art fits so many other specialties? Ooh, that's a good question.
That's a good question. Um, so to be honest, most of the improvements that come up actually come up from problems. So like we look at problems that already exist, or like, oh, there's always a way to make something more efficient. And like even if you think it is the highest level of efficiency, you can always make it more efficient. So I don't have like an exact statement or thing that I'm thinking about that could make things really efficient, or like improved, but um, I'm constantly just thinking about ways to make my own pipelines more smoother or like how it could help other people as well. Like somebody asked me about releasing some of the toolage that I made, and I'm like, I don't know if I'm ready to do that yet. Like I have to test it some more. Like last thing you want to do is release a broken tool and people are like, "Oh my God,
Yeah,
the tool doesn't work" or whatever.
yeah. Nah, I feel that. And then there's also things that like there's the understanding and like possibly some assumptions that you have about like your pipeline when you set up the tool that like if you don't know someone else's pipeline, like there might be adjustments that the tool needs to make that like I haven't seen your pipeline, I can't say.
Yeah, it's kind of like forcing everybody to work to your own pipeline. Like
Yeah,
the tool that I made before, it was like I took a collection of like 5 or 6 teams because I was in grad school. So I
yeah,
looked at all their pipelines and I found inefficiencies and I was like, would this help if I did this? And then like the biggest thing is forcing people to follow the rules you set in front of them. Because most
yeah,
people they're used to their pipelines and they're more reluctant to like switch up how they're used to working. Like
yeah.
I have to like force artists to use my tools. I'm like, use the tool. It's like, but I can do it so much faster. It's like my tool saves you 50% of the time. You can be
Yeah,
doing other things. Why would you waste like 50% more time on this when you could just push a button? They're like, nah. I'm like, use the
yeah.
tool.
Change management. That is the term I've been told by managers that I was like, yeah, you'll have a lot of fun actually getting people to do the change. Once they've actually done it, then they're like, oh, this is a great idea. Why didn't I do this? And you're just sitting there like, yeah, you're right. Why didn't you do the thing I've been telling you to do for weeks?
Yeah, it's all about like, and it's like I spent time evaluating your actual pipeline. Like I've made tools for specific people too. Like when I was bored or needed something to do, I would ask my friends like, "Yo, so what thing are you doing that's like making you spend a lot of time?" And one of my friends, like how I ended up with the actual folder structure maker, is one of my 3D friends was like, "Yeah, I spent a lot of time making folder structures and new like projects and stuff like that." I'm like, "Would a tool help you?" And it's like, yeah. I'm like, okay. And all my tools are one button clicks. Like you don't do anything except click an executable and it installs. There's no, are you okay? This is gonna do this. I put it on your
Yeah,
fold in your computer. I make a shortcut. Like all this stuff is meant to make it very smooth. Because like if a
right,
person has to click a whole bunch, they're most likely not going to use it.
right. No, I like that. I like that focus on like even from like a UI UX perspective of just like I'm going to make this as easy as possible to like make your like pipeline as easy as possible.
Oh yeah, if you're spending 10 minutes trying to do the task that it took you 2 minutes, then my tool is terrible. So like a lot of the time is like, all right, I time myself. I'm like, how long does it take me to do this? And also making documentation for the tool. Like people don't want to read documentation. So you have to make a 1 minute video explaining what this
Oh
thing
my god,
does.
they
Yeah,
don't.
it's
They
they're
don't.
gonna hate it. Especially like most of the time the tools are for artists and artists don't want to read anything. They're like, what do you mean I gotta read a 5 page paper about a tool? Like, can you make this like give me the spark notes? So yeah.
Yeah. You just be like, can you explain? Yeah, they're just like, oh man, like I don't know how it works. I wrote all this documentation. I gotta read. What? Like, oh, I'm
Yo,
gonna.
give me some gifts. I need a
Yeah,
GIF.
yeah,
You give me like
yeah,
3 GIFs to explain your whole tool. It's like,
yeah. Can you explain? Can you explain how this works in the office gifts? And I'm like, oh my god.
yep. So it was fun. Like you have to actually make things really easy to read. And I learned that. Like when I first made my tool, it was like a whole bunch of clicks, and my teacher I passed it to him, and he was just like, "You asked anybody to touch this yet?" I'm like, "Oh no, I brought it to you to let you." It was like, ask 3 artists to just mess with your tool and don't say anything. Just let them mess with the tool. And then they
Okay.
were clicking random stuff. And I was just like, what are you clicking? Why are you clicking that? Like, what are you doing? And it's just like, I learned quickly. It's like, I should probably make a pop up that says like 2 sentences, what this thing is and like what you should click first. And yeah, That I actually implement that into all of my workflow too. Like whenever I have like a playtest, I just
Yeah,
give the person a thing and I'm like writing notes like
yeah.
what don't you understand? And then I like when they do something weird, I'm like, why'd you do that? They're like, oh, because my eye went directly to that and I just thought it would be interesting to click it. I'm like, make that button less interesting to press.
He's like, I gotta make that button uglier. So,
Yeah, yeah.
uh, oh, here's another great question from Chris. I'll get back to your question right after that, Tim. Do you find yourself working with UX researchers? It seems like a lot of the tools you make would be really helpful for non-artists in other areas of game dev, and I think user researchers would be mad interested in it.
Uh, so I have not um found myself working with UX researchers. I do like question things like UI a lot though. Like whenever I'm playing things or interacting with UI, just because it's just a natural knee jerk reaction. When you spend so much time making UI elements for people to use your tools, you constantly question like, why did they do this? Like, what made them do this? What's the logic behind this? What was the choice? Is this on purpose? Stuff like that. Like the quit button. Why did they put it at the bottom instead of the top? Do they expect you to quit first, or like why didn't they put retry? Do they expect you not to retry, and that's just the way the game is meant to be played? Like stuff like that. Hopefully that answers your
Interesting.
question. I'm pretty sure they would be interested in like just having conversations.
Oh,
Yeah, it kind of did. Uh,
sweet. All right. So from Tim, he's like he's wondering if you and other tech artists have to like do any real work to keep up with like major engine updates because like when Unity has like build this big major releases, does it do anything to like break your tool? And then I'm gonna say by that look on your face that the answer is yes. You have had to deal with tool support when they break your tool.
yeah, yeah. I have a few examples. One is uh, I made a tool for Maya, and it was for a specific version of Maya. It was like, yeah, this tool makes this and opens Maya. Um, it wasn't helpful that some artists were using a newer version of Maya because they wanted to use a specific tool. So they'll click the tool, it'll open, and it'll crash Maya, and they're like, "Your tool crashes Maya. It's broken." I'm like, "What version of Maya are you using?" And they're like, "Oh, the latest one. I just got it yesterday." It's like, okay. Now I have to find out how to make the tool work for that. Or certain engines deprecate things like Unreal, switching from 4 to 5, they deprecated quite a few things that made tools functional. So having to go back in and figure out, okay, what did they deprecate that isn't being used anymore? How did they change this thing in order to make it work? Excuse me. Because artists love to jump to the newest version of the engine, so do designers, because there's a new bell or whistle that they see and they're like, yeah, I want to use that now. Um,
Ah. And then as the
yeah.
engine developer side, you're like, what do you mean? You just jumped to the new one. What are you doing to me?
I worked on a project with someone one time who they wanted to use a new element of Unreal, and everybody else had the older version. And what they did is overnight, they upgraded the engine and then pushed it up
Oh my
through
god.
Perforce.
Oh
So
my god.
everybody on the team logged in, pulled latest because they were like, oh, normal, get latest
Yeah.
in the morning. And everybody across the team, they're like, what's broken? Why is the game broken? Why can't I open the game? And the guys checked the Perforce log and they're like, someone pushed a giant push last night. And the guy who came in, he came in later in the day and was like,
Of course.
oh,
Of course. That's the thing. You break the build at the end of the day and then you're the last one in the next day.
yeah, that push came in at like 1 o'clock in the morning. And we're
Oh
just
my
like,
god. Ah, there
you
it
didn't
is.
tell anybody? You
Yeah,
didn't tell
man.
anybody to get latest? It was like,
That
oh,
that good old
yeah,
cowboy code.
yeah. So yeah, that's just two examples of when it's happened, and it's just like, oh, that's great.
Actually, so I jump off of actually Tim's question. So I can definitely see how that would happen with like major like releases from like, Unit Unreal 4 to 5. But have you had that happen in like updates from like let's say 5.0 to 5.1?
Uh, so that change wasn't with the 4 to 5. That change was actually with like 426 to 427.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was that kind of change. It was like a small change
Okay, a
that
minor
I
revision.
wanted to
Oh,
share.
okay.
Yeah, it was a minor revision. Um, I remember when I updated Unreal for one of my projects, Unreal deprecated the usage of spawning things on the construction script. So I would test with the construction script to spawn
Right.
things. And I was
Yeah.
like, why doesn't any of my things work anymore? And I looked at the log and they were like, yeah, we took that out because people kept crashing their games with it. And I was like, y'all couldn't just make a boolean so that I could still do this? And they're like, no, we kept getting people complaining about it breaking their game, so we just took it out completely. I was like, it says that if you're gonna do this, you must be like, we anticipate you being pretty advanced if you're gonna do this. But yeah, they just completely took it out.
Cool.
Yeah, it's great.
Great.
Yeah, I was in pain.
Oh, thank you very much for coming, Grace. Have a good night, evening. Yeah, so that's all of my questions. Is there anyone else who wanted to ask anything?
And yeah, Tim,
Oh.
that's exactly why we usually don't upgrade mid project, which I've experienced so many times now. Like I'm actually shocked at how often it happens. I was like, yeah, we're gonna stick in this forever, and like I have never been on a game that didn't upgrade the engine, but at least I had like really good engineers that they tested on their side, and then like they would actually push it after like two or three people tested on their computers to make sure it works. So that's the positive.
Ooh, actually, here's another good question from Tim. It seems like a lot of clever accessibility features often involve a lot of tech art support to stand up. Have you had much experience adding accessibility support features? Curious about the process for like adapting for accessibility.
So I've only made one game for accessibility. Like, we had to make accessibility features. It was part of a game jam. It was for kids with cerebral palsy, where they couldn't actually hold controllers, and we had to make like specific settings in the game in order for the kids, because they were all like, we want to play games, but we can't play games like uh, everyone else. So that one was actually pretty interesting, and the game received a lot of good reviews. Uh, in trials, we had to do some adjustments too because we found out not everybody could see all the colors of the spectrum. And when you're using RGB, some people think that like, oh, if you state, look for the green thing in the room, some people can't see green the same way. They might see it as yellow, or it's like a little blurry for them. So yeah, we had to do a few adjustments inside of the game in order to make it work, or at least functional. So yeah, that was a good question.
From Prescott, is Glass Cat Studios hiring?
Not at the moment. I get questions like that quite often. I'm actually gonna aim for the Unreal Epic grant for my current
Ooh,
game. I applied and got really far the last time, but
okay.
fell slightly short. So now that I have like my dev kit that I'm working on things, I'm going to push for another request. And I already have like a list of like what I need in order to bring True Mechanics all the way. So
Nice.
I'll
All
keep you
right.
guys posted.
I was just about to say, definitely let me know. Definitely like should pop in the Discord and let us all know how that goes.
Will do.
All right. That's fantastic. So we're coming up on like time. So I was gonna say if there's anything that you want to like just say at the end, just like plug your socials, any like final thoughts you have.
Yeah, if you want, uh, you can follow me at HezFX. That's F and an X on Instagram, and I think it's the same on X, or it might be like Are You Hero? I think I use my Twitch handle for my like Twitter, just because I was like, like my Instagram's private is, and I generally only like accept like friends and like close people. You
Yeah.
can follow me at Glass Cat Studios on Instagram. That's where I post like updates. It's also on Twitter or X. Oh my God, it's killing me. It's like I don't know which one to say. Like everybody knows it by Twitter, and if I say X, everybody thinks it's like a song X gonna give it to you or something. Like,
uh,
but yeah, that's where you can follow me as well. I make posts. I haven't made a post recently because I've been on the hush hush and like game deving on the down low so that no one knows what I'm doing. But I'm about to start posting again as well.
all right. Well, thank you very much for your time. It has been a pleasure. You've definitely taught me some things. I'm definitely gonna like once I get further into my dev stuff, I might have to hit you up for some advice.
Yeah, feel free. Like I'm here for any type of game dev. I love game dev. Like even if you have questions about like design or like my thoughts on stuff like that. Like I like all types of game dev. Like I game dev in my free time. Like I'm always thinking about it. I don't play games as much, but I'm always thinking about game dev and willing to help.
All right. Well, again, thank you very much. I think we're gonna wrap it up for the evening. But yeah, take care. Also, everyone, thank you very much for coming, and everyone have a good night.
Take it easy. Thanks for having me.